Open your bag, right now. Veronica didn't say it like a question. She said it like a sentence. Her living room was full that afternoon. Not a party exactly, but the kind of gathering she liked. Women with perfect hair and men who looked like they'd never carried their own groceries. Everyone held a glass. Everyone smiled too sharply, the kind of smiles that mean you're being measured. I was in the middle of clearing snack plates from the low table when she spoke. I remember how quiet it got, like someone turned off the air. And then Evan. He was 6, small and bright and constantly moving, like he had a battery inside him. But the second Veronica pointed at me, his whole body changed. He ran to me and grabbed my waist with both arms. He pressed his face into my shirt and screamed into the fabric, "Don't take her! Don't take her!" I froze, because when a child does that, it isn't drama. It's instinct. It's terror. Veronica's eyes narrowed at him like he was a stain on her white couch. "Evan," she said, with that controlled social voice, the one she used at the bilingual school drop-off. "Sweetheart, step away." He held tighter. I could feel him shaking. I could feel my own pulse in my ears. "Veronica," I started, careful, soft. My English always got more careful when I was scared. "What is happening?" She lifted her chin and looked at me like I was an employee who forgot a rule. "My necklace is missing," someone whispered. A soft gasp, like the word missing was entertaining. Veronica's fingers touched her throat, empty now, and she let her eyes travel across the room, as if she expected the necklace to appear out of guilt. "It was on the tray," she said, "in my bedroom. I took it off before lunch. It's the one my husband gave me for our anniversary." She said husband like it was a brand name. "And now it's gone." She paused just long enough for the air to tighten. Then she looked directly at me. "You were upstairs. You were the only one upstairs." No, that wasn't even true. I opened my mouth, but she raised her hand to stop me. "Don't insult us by pretending you don't understand. Us, the guests, the staff, everyone who mattered." Evan made a choke sound like he couldn't breathe. I bent slightly and tried to pull him closer, to calm him with my body, the way I always did when nightmares happened. Veronica's eyes flicked to him and then back to me. "You know," she said, "immigration doesn't look kindly on people who steal from their employers." The word immigration landed like a slap. I felt my face go hot. I felt the room tilt. I saw my mother's hands in my mind, worn and cracked from cleaning, the money I sent every month, the message she always wrote back. "Gracias, mi amor. We're okay because of you." I had come here to work, to keep my head down, to be invisible and useful. And now I was standing in a mansion, being threatened in front of rich strangers. "Please," I said, and I hated the way my voice sounded smaller than I wanted. "I did not take anything. I swear." Veronica smiled, like she was amused I thought swearing meant something. "Then open your bag." My bag was in the hallway closet, where I kept it like I always did. My passport was inside, my phone, the little envelope where I kept Evan's drawings because I couldn't throw them away, a small pouch with my family's photos. It was my life in fabric and zippers. I walked to the closet, my legs heavy. Evan tried to follow, still attached to me, but Veronica snapped her fingers, and one of the house staff, Carla, stepped in front of him. Carla avoided my eyes. Everyone avoided my eyes. I pulled my bag from the shelf and brought it back. I set it on the table. My hands shook as if they belonged to someone else. Veronica leaned in like she wanted the moment. "Go on," she said. "Show us." A guest, one of her friends, laughed softly, like it was a game. I unzipped the main compartment. At first, it was normal, my sweater, my water bottle, my small notebook with Spanish words I practiced quietly, even though I already understood more than people assumed. Then Veronica reached in herself. She didn't ask permission. She just plunged her hand into my bag, like she owned my skin. She pulled out my pouch of family photos and tossed it aside. She pulled out Evan's drawings, crumpled them slightly, and dropped them like trash. Evan made a sound and tried to run forward, but Carla grabbed his shoulders. "Don't!" I whispered, to Carla, to Veronica, to the air. Veronica's fingers found something at the bottom. She paused, her eyes lit with satisfaction, and then she lifted it. A small velvet box, dark blue, expensive. The room made a collective sound, like a synchronized inhale. Veronica opened it slowly, performing. Inside, resting on black velvet, was the necklace. Diamonds like frozen light. I stared. Because I had never seen that box in my life. Because my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. Because my bag, was suddenly a crime scene. Veronica held the open box up like proof. "Well," she said sweetly. "Would you look at that?" The guests murmured. Someone said, "Oh my God." Someone else said, "I knew it." Like they had been waiting for a reason to believe the worst. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Evan started sobbing, hard, panicked sobs that came from deep inside him. He twisted against Carla's hands. "It's not hers!" he screamed. "It's not hers! She wouldn't!" Veronica didn't look at him. She was too busy looking at the room, letting the room admire her victory. "Lucia," she said, drawing out my name with a fake sadness, "I gave you a home. I trusted you with my child, and you repay me like this?" I couldn't speak. Because what do you say when the evidence is literally in your bag? My mind raced through the day. Lunch, Evan's homework, the laundry I folded, the short moment I went upstairs to put away clean towels. I had been in her bedroom, yes, but only to drop towels in the bathroom. I hadn't touched anything else. I hadn't. The words in my head were frantic, useless. Veronica closed the box and set it down like she was placing a final stamp on my life. "I'm calling the police," she said, "and I think we should also call your agency and maybe immigration, just to be thorough." I flinched. I hated that I flinched. She noticed. Her smile widened. That's when I saw him. At the edge of the room, near the hallway, a man I hadn't seen before. Not one of the guests, not one of the regular staff. He wore simple, dark clothes. No watch that screamed money. No loud shoes. He looked like what Veronica would call help, except his posture didn't match. He stood too still, too aware. His eyes were on me, not with pity, with evaluation, like he was watching a test. And then, quietly, he stepped forward. Veronica barely glanced at him, irritated. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. The man's voice was calm, low, American. "I'm the new driver," he said, like it was nothing. "Miles sent me for the weekend." Veronica's eyes narrowed again. "Miles who?" He didn't answer that. He just walked to the table, reached into his pocket, and placed a thick leather wallet down beside the velvet box. It landed with a heavy sound. Everyone looked at it. He opened it just enough for a stack of crisp bills to show. Then he leaned slightly toward me, so only I could hear. "Let's see who you really are," he whispered. My skin went cold, because I didn't understand why a driver would do that, and because his eyes, they weren't just eyes. They were a person who had power, pretending not to. Veronica scoffed. "This isn't your problem." The man straightened and looked around the room. "I think it is," he said, "if the house is compromised." Compromised. A word rich people used when they meant someone poor had touched their world. Veronica's jaw tightened. "You can go," she told him. He didn't move. Instead, he turned to me again, his voice still calm. "Did you take it?" I stared at him. My throat burned. "No," I said. "No, I did not." He watched me for a long second. Too long. Then he nodded slightly, like he heard something more than words. Veronica laughed sharply. "Of course she says no." He didn't respond to her. He looked at Evan, who was still struggling, crying, pleading with his whole body. Then he said something that made the room shift again. "Before anyone calls anyone," he said, "maybe we should check the security feed." Veronica's expression flickered, just for a fraction of a second, but I saw it, a tiny flash of caution. "The cameras were being serviced," she said quickly. "They've been glitchy." The man's eyes stayed on her. "Serviced by who?" Veronica's friend, a blonde woman in a silk blouse, chimed in. "Oh, Veronica, don't waste time. She's guilty. It's right there." Someone else nodded. The man looked back at me, and I felt something strange. Not safety, but an opening, a possibility that someone here didn't automatically believe Veronica. Veronica's voice went sharp again. "Lucia, pack your things. You will sleep in the staff room tonight. Tomorrow we will sort this out." "Tonight?" I repeated, confused. "You're not leaving this property," Veronica said. "Not until I decide what happens." It hit me then. This wasn't just an accusation. It was a cage. I looked at Carla, at the other staff in the doorway. Their faces were closed, afraid, loyal to the paycheck. I looked at Evan. His cheeks were wet, his eyes red, his mouth open like he couldn't understand a world where adults could do this. And I realized something that made my stomach drop. If they called the police right now, Veronica would win, because she had the money, the status, the story, and I was a woman with an accent holding a child who wasn't mine. My voice sounded smaller when I asked, "Can I at least hug him?" Veronica rolled her eyes. "Don't dramatize." But Evan tore free from Carla and ran to me anyway. He slammed into my legs and held on like he was drowning. "Please," he sobbed. "Please don't go." I wrapped my arms around him and closed my eyes. In that moment I understood the truth that would guide everything that came next. This wasn't just about my name. This was about him. Because if Veronica could use a necklace to destroy me, she could use anything to break him, and I could see it already. The way she looked at him like he was a possession, not a child, a tool, a piece on a board. The guests started to move, like the entertainment was ending. Glasses clinked, soft voices returned. People pretended they weren't watching someone's life collapse. Veronica spoke quietly to Carla, ordering her to watch me. The new driver, Miles's driver, stood back again, hands folded, eyes still observing. I caught his gaze one more time. He didn't smile. He didn't soften, but he didn't look away either. That night, I slept in the small staff room off the laundry area. It wasn't my room. My room was upstairs, near Evan's room, because Veronica liked to have me close when she needed something. Now, she wanted me far. Carla locked the door from the outside. I sat on the narrow bed and stared at the wall until my eyes burned. I called my mother, but I didn't tell her. I couldn't. I just listened to her voice for a minute and said I was tired. When I hung up, my hands shook. I thought of my passport in my bag, now contaminated by Veronica's lies. I thought of the necklace box in the living room, the way the diamonds looked almost innocent, beautiful, sharp. I thought of Evan's face, and then I thought of the new driver's whisper. "Let's see who you really are." It sounded like a threat or a promise. In the morning, Veronica acted like nothing happened. That's what people like her did. They could destroy you at 3 p.m. and then request coffee at 8 a.m. with the same calm. She sent Carla to bring me breakfast, a piece of toast and a cup of coffee, like a prison kindness. Carla set it down and didn't speak. I ate because I had to, because if I got weak, Veronica would win faster. At 9, Veronica came to the laundry room doorway. She didn't step inside. She didn't need to. The doorway was her boundary. "Lucia," she said, "come." I followed her down the hallway like a shadow. Evan was in the school uniform, backpack on, eyes puffy. He ran to me as soon as he saw me. "Are you leaving?" he asked, voice trembling. I crouched. "No, mi amor, I'm here." Veronica's head snapped. "Speak English." Evan flinched. I forced a smile. "I'm here," I repeated in English, and Evan nodded like he was storing the sentence as protection. The new driver was in the entryway, holding car keys. He wore the same simple clothes. No name tag, no forced cheer. Veronica pointed at him without looking. "This is... What did you say your name was?" "Ben," he said smoothly. A lie. I felt it instantly. It sat wrong on him. Veronica waved her hand. "Ben will drive us to school today." Evan looked at me, confused. I usually drove with Veronica, or I took Evan in my own small car when she didn't feel like going. Now, I was not allowed behind a wheel. We walked outside to the driveway where the black SUV waited. The air smelled like cut grass and expensive flowers. Evan climbed into the back seat and immediately reached for my hand. Veronica sat in the front like a queen. The driver, Ben, started the car. As we pulled away, Veronica spoke without turning around. "You will not speak to anyone at the school," she said. "You will not tell anyone what happened yesterday. Do you understand?" My mouth went dry. "You'll embarrass yourself," she added, "and you'll embarrass Evan, unless you want him to be known as the child whose nanny stole jewelry." Evan squeezed my hand hard, like he felt the words as pain. I swallowed. "I understand." The driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, to me, to Evan's hand in mine. Then he looked back at the road. At the bilingual school, Veronica smiled again. It was a skill, to put on a smile like a mask and never let anyone see the teeth underneath. She kissed Evan's forehead for show. Evan barely reacted. She handed the teacher a donation envelope as casually as someone handing a tip, and I stood behind her, invisible again. Only this time, invisibility felt like danger. On the way back, Veronica tapped her phone and spoke casually. "I spoke to my friend at the agency," she said. "They're very disappointed." My heart tightened. "They said if I file a formal report, it will be very difficult for you to work in this country again." She said it like she was discussing weather. I stared out the window and forced my breathing to stay even. "You understand," she continued. "I could end you, but I'm not unreasonable." Her tone softened. That's what made it worse. "I don't enjoy drama," she said. "I enjoy order. So here's what will happen. You will stay. You will follow the rules. You will not make trouble. And if the necklace somehow returns to my tray without anyone making a scene, then maybe I consider this a misunderstanding." I turned my head slowly. "Return," I repeated. Veronica's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You heard me." The driver's fingers tightened slightly on the steering wheel. I watched him in the mirror. His face stayed neutral, but something in his jaw shifted, like he was holding himself back. When we arrived home, Veronica walked inside as if she owned the air. She went straight to her office. The driver lingered in the entryway, like he was waiting for something. I tried to pass him quietly, but he spoke softly. "Lucia." I stopped. My pulse jumped because nobody said my name gently in this house unless they wanted something. I turned. He looked down the hallway to make sure Veronica was out of earshot, then back at me. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 7 months, I said. "And before that?" "Au pair program," I answered. "Different family, different city." He studied my face like he was comparing it to something. "What's your last name?" I hesitated. It felt like giving away a piece of myself. "Morales," I said. He nodded, as if he expected that. "You know she's lying," I said, and my voice cracked on the last word. He didn't react like a normal driver. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't say, "That's terrible." He said, "I know." My breath caught. Then he said something that made my stomach drop in a different way. "She wants you gone." I stared at him. "She wants a reason," he continued. Now she has one. I swallowed hard. Why? His eyes flicked to the hallway again. Sometimes people don't want truth. They want control. He paused. Then he said, I'm going to make you an offer. My body tensed. An offer? He nodded once, calm, cold. You work 48 hours, he said. No pay. You do your job like nothing happened. You follow instructions. You don't steal. You don't lie. My throat tightened. I didn't steal. I know, he said again, like it was a fact. And at the end of 48 hours, he continued, if you're innocent, I'll double your salary, and I'll clear your name publicly. Publicly. The word hit me like light. It was what I needed, because behind closed doors, Veronica could always rewrite the story. Only public truth would survive her. But then his offer caught up with me. No pay, I repeated. He didn't blink. 48 hours. That is punishment, I said before I could stop myself. His gaze sharpened slightly. It's a test. A test for who? I asked, and my voice came out harsher than I intended. He held my stare. For you, he said, and for everyone else. I felt my hands curl into fists. I could walk out. I could leave the property, call my agency, call someone, make noise. But then I pictured Evan at school, asking where I was, crying, getting quiet, Veronica telling him I abandoned him, and something in me hardened. Because Veronica didn't just want to remove me. She wanted to break the one bond Evan had that didn't revolve around her. And I had seen her eyes, the way she watched him like he was leverage. I forced my voice steady. If I say no, I asked, what happens? The driver's eyes stayed on mine. She reports you, he said simply. My stomach dropped. It wasn't fair, it wasn't moral, but it was real. I took a breath. In my mind, I heard my mother again. We're okay because of you. But this time it wasn't about money. It was about a child's sense of safety. I nodded once. I accept, I said. The driver didn't smile. He didn't thank me. He just nodded like he'd been waiting for the answer. Good, he said. Then start acting like you belong here. I almost laughed at the cruelty of it. But then he leaned in slightly and lowered his voice. And Lucia, he added, don't do this for her. I blinked. He looked toward the hallway, toward where Evan's laughter could sometimes be heard when the world felt normal. Do it for him, he finished. I didn't answer because my throat was too tight. He turned and walked away like he'd never spoken to me at all. That day was the first of the 48 hours. Veronica didn't announce the test. She didn't need to. She treated me like a stain she was trying to scrub out slowly. At lunch, she left her purse open on the counter, bills visible, cards half exposed. She watched me from the doorway as I poured Evan's juice. At dinner, she placed a shopping bag from an expensive store on the sofa and asked me to put it away, then disappeared, leaving me alone with the bag like a trap. I carried it carefully to her closet without opening it. Each time I felt her eyes on me, felt her waiting for me to make a mistake. And each time, Evan watched too, not like Veronica did. Evan watched with fear, like he thought one wrong move and I would vanish. So I moved slower. I spoke softer. I made myself a steady thing. At night, when Evan asked if I was still in trouble, I told him, we're just fixing a misunderstanding. He frowned. But you didn't do it. I know, I said. Then why are they mad? I held his small face in my hands and looked into his eyes. Sometimes, I told him, grown-ups get scared of the wrong things. He stared at me like he was trying to understand the world through that sentence. Then he whispered, I'm scared too. I pulled him into my arms. I know, I said. I'm here. He fell asleep, holding my sleeve. The second day, Veronica escalated. She invited another small group over, this time for a planning brunch for her elite charity event coming up. It would be hosted at the mansion, with donations, speeches, cameras, the whole performance of goodness. She wanted Evan there. Of course she did. Because Evan, with his big eyes and polite smile, made rich people feel generous. He was a symbol, a prop, and I was a threat to how she used him. During brunch, Veronica made sure the conversation drifted toward me. "How do you even find someone like that?" one woman asked, nodding toward me like I was furniture. Veronica laughed. "Agencies, you know, they send you girls who are grateful just to be here. Grateful girls." I kept my face still and poured coffee. One man, older, looked at me and said, "Where are you from?" Before I could answer, Veronica cut in. "She's from somewhere in South America, Venezuela, or maybe Colombia, all the same, really." My hands tightened around the coffee pot. "I was from Mexico." But she didn't care, because accuracy wasn't the point. Ownership was. Evan sat at the edge of the room with crayons. He listened. I could see his shoulders rise slowly, like he was preparing to protect me again. I caught his eye and shook my head slightly. "Don't fight them," I tried to say with my look. "Not yet." The driver, Ben, stood near the hallway like he belonged to the house now. Veronica ignored him, but I didn't. I noticed how he watched, how his gaze tracked the room, the staff, the entrances, how his attention sharpened when Veronica spoke about the cameras. "They're finally fixed," Veronica announced loudly, like it was good news. "We had to adjust them. You can't trust technology these days." Adjusted. The words slid through my mind and didn't settle. Later in the kitchen, I found Carla whispering to another woman I didn't know well, Lena, one of the night cleaning staff who sometimes helped in the security room. They spoke softly, thinking I was too busy rinsing dishes to pay attention, and then I heard it, not English, not fully Spanish either, a messy mix, portuñol, Spanish words with Portuguese endings, the kind of lazy language people use when they assume nobody around them understands. "Ella quasi chorou," Lena muttered, laughing. Carla replied, "Veronica gosta disso. Humilhar." I kept my face blank. My heart started to pound, because I understood every word. She almost cried. Veronica likes that. Humiliation. Then Lena said something that made my stomach flip. "As câmeras, a gente já ajustou, tá tudo certo." "The cameras? We already adjusted them. It's all set." Carla snorted. "E o colar?" Lena's voice dropped. "Tá guardado no lugar de sempre. Ninguém vai achar. It's stored where it always is. Nobody will find it." I kept rinsing the dish. My fingers went numb. Stored where it always is. So the necklace in my bag wasn't the real necklace. Or maybe it was, but they had another plan. Or maybe they were talking about where they hid it before planting it. My mind raced. I needed more. But I couldn't turn. I couldn't stare. So I did what immigrants learn to do fast. I pretended I didn't understand. I hummed softly, like my mind was elsewhere. Carla and Lena kept talking. Lena said, "Aquele ponto cego. Continua. That blind spot. It still exists." Carla laughed quietly. "Ótimo. Porque ela vai cair." Great. Because she's going to fall. I felt my stomach tighten, blind spot, cameras adjusted, and a necklace stored where it always is. I dried my hands slowly and turned, smiling politely, as if I'd only caught the tone, not the meaning. Carla stiffened, then forced a smile. "Lucia," she said in English, too bright, "can you take the trash out?" "Of course," I said sweetly. I grabbed the trash bag and walked outside, my heart hammering. The sun was bright, the grass too green, everything too perfect, but inside me something shifted, because now I had a clue, not proof, but a thread. And if I pulled it carefully, maybe I could unravel the whole thing. That night, I found myself near the security room. I wasn't supposed to be there. Veronica had made it clear I had no access now. But the security room was close to the back hallway, and the laundry baskets were stored nearby. I had a reason to pass. The door was slightly open. I saw screens inside. I saw a chair and someone sitting in it. An older man, broad shoulders, grey hair, uniform worn like he'd been here longer than the marble floors. I had seen him before around the property. Quiet, unnoticed, the kind of worker rich people look through. His name was Grey. People called him Mr. Grey, like that was all he needed. He looked up as I passed. Our eyes met. I kept walking. Then, softly, he spoke without raising his voice. "You dropped something, miss." I stopped. I looked down. Nothing. I turned slightly. He didn't look at me directly anymore. He stared at the screen like he was talking to himself. "Funny thing," he murmured, "how folks think cameras see everything." My throat went tight. I stepped closer to the doorway, just enough to be heard, but not enough to look like I was sneaking. I don't understand," I said carefully. His eyes flicked to me, then away again. "You understand plenty," he said quietly. I froze. He leaned back slightly, still watching the screens. "Some people," he said, "use blind spots like pockets." My heart hammered. "You know?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "If you want to survive here, you learn the house. You learn the rhythms, who turns keys, who logs in, who thinks nobody's watching." I felt like my lungs were full of smoke. "Why are you telling me?" I asked. His mouth twitched, almost like a smile that didn't want to be seen. "Because," he said, "I've seen this movie before." Movie, a strange word for a man like him. He finally turned and looked at me fully. His eyes were tired but sharp. "Don't trust the loud ones," he said. "Trust the patterns." Then he nodded toward the hallway behind me. "Go," he added. "They'll notice if you linger." I walked away, my legs shaky, but my mind was on fire. Because now I wasn't alone. Because someone in this house had seen this kind of setup before, and because the driver, Ben, had made an offer that felt cruel. But maybe it wasn't about cruelty. Maybe it was about time, 48 hours, time to map the house, time to watch the watchers, time to protect Evan while I gathered what I needed. The next morning, Veronica set the biggest trap yet. She announced casually that she needed me to help prepare for the charity event happening that evening. More guests, more eyes, more performance. "Your opportunity," she said, "to show you're not trash." I swallowed my anger. "Yes," I said. She had a list, decorations, seating cards, catering deliveries, and then, like it was nothing, she placed an envelope on the kitchen island. It was thick. It had cash inside. I could see the edges. "This is for the florist," she said. "Do not lose it." Then she walked away, leaving it there, leaving me alone with it. I felt my face heat, because I knew what she was doing. She wanted someone to catch me near money again. She wanted another moment like the necklace. I picked up the envelope with 2 fingers, like it was dirty, and carried it straight to the safe drawer in her office, where I'd seen her put things before. But the drawer was locked. Of course it was. So I stood there, the envelope heavy in my hand, and realized the trap was designed perfectly. If I left it on the island, she could claim I ignored instructions. If I kept it with me, she could claim I took it. If I asked Carla, she would twist it. My heart pounded. Then I remembered Mr. Gray's words. Trust the patterns. I walked back to the kitchen and called out in a calm voice, "Veronica?" She didn't answer. I called again, louder. "Veronica, the drawer is locked. Where should I place the florist money so it's safe?" Silence. Then Veronica's voice from the hallway, annoyed. "Just leave it on the island. Don't touch it more than you already have." So that was what she wanted. I set it down carefully, flat, exactly where it was, and stepped back. Carla entered a minute later and glanced at it. then at me, like she was checking whether I'd failed. I didn't react. I just kept chopping vegetables for Evan's lunch, because the real work wasn't in the obvious traps. The real work was in the cameras, in the logs, in the blind spots, in the place the necklace was stored where it always is. Later, I found Evan in the playroom, unusually quiet. He held a folded piece of paper in his hand like it was a secret. "Lucia," he whispered when he saw me, "I made you something." My chest tightened. "For me?" He nodded and held it up. It was a drawing, crayon lines, me and him holding hands, a big sun, a house, and then, in shaky letters, he'd written something under it. I looked closer. It said, "She took it." My blood went cold. "What is this?" I whispered, terrified. Evan's face fell immediately, like he realized the words did something bad. "No," he said quickly. "No, it's not." Footsteps in the hallway. Carla's voice. "Evan, Veronica wants you." Evan grabbed my sleeve, panic flooding his face. "I didn't mean that," he whispered. "I didn't mean you." My heart hammered. Because if anyone saw that paper, and in that second, I understood how the next stage of this would go. They would use Evan. They would twist his words. They would make the child's innocence into a weapon. I folded the paper quickly and slipped it into my pocket, pressing my palm over it like I could erase the danger. Evan's eyes were wide. I meant you took my drawing from the table. I wanted you to take it." His voice cracked on the last word. "Oh," I whispered, relief and dread mixing into something that almost made me dizzy. He had tried to write, "She took it," like she took my drawing, like she took the gift, but without context it looked like a confession, like proof. I knelt and pulled him close. "Listen to me," I said softly. "You didn't do anything wrong. Okay?" He nodded but still looked scared. "Words can be tricky," I told him, "even when your heart is right." He whispered, "Are they going to make me say bad things?" My stomach clenched. "No," I said, and I meant it like a vow. "Not if I can help it." Because now the clock inside me was loud. The charity event was tonight. That would be the moment Veronica wanted to finish me in front of the elite. And it could also be the moment I turned her stage against her. If I could get the truth on those screens, if I could get the full footage, the real logs, the access history, if I could make sure Evan didn't get used like a puppet. The driver, Ben, appeared in the hallway that afternoon while staff rushed around preparing. He watched me for a moment, then spoke quietly when no one else was near. "You heard something?" he said. It wasn't a question. I hesitated, then nodded slightly. "In Spanish," I said. His eyes sharpened. "What did you hear?" I kept my voice low. "They talked about cameras, adjusting, blind spots, and the necklace being stored where it always is." For the first time, his expression changed. It wasn't shock. It was confirmation, like he'd been waiting for that sentence. He leaned closer, voice barely audible. "Good," he said. "That means we can prove it." "We." My chest tightened. "Who are you?" I whispered. He held my gaze. "Not who Veronica thinks," he said. Then he glanced down the hall where Evan's laughter suddenly burst out. Small, bright, unaware. His face softened for half a second, and that softness scared me more than the cold did, because it meant he cared. And if he cared, this wasn't just business. Before he could say more, Veronica's voice snapped from the living room. "Ben, move the donation boxes to the side entrance, now." He stepped back instantly, mask on again. But as he turned, he murmured one last thing without looking at me. "Tonight," he said. "Be ready and keep the boy close. She's going to try something." Then he walked away, And I stood in the kitchen, surrounded by expensive flowers and polished silver trays, feeling like I was standing on the edge of something huge, something Veronica thought she controlled, something she didn't realize I could understand, because she thought my accent meant I was slow, she thought my job meant I was powerless, she thought the cameras were her weapon, but the cameras, if we got the truth, could become mine. By the time the sun started lowering behind the tall hedges of the gated community, the mansion looked like a magazine cover. White linens on every table, glass vases full of pale roses, gold name cards lined up like tiny trophies, staff moving in silent lines, trained to look effortless. Veronica loved nights like this because they made her feel untouchable, and tonight she intended to make me disappear on her stage. I kept Evan close all afternoon, not in an obvious way, not like a shield, just always within reach. When he wandered toward the staircase, I redirected him with a snack. When he tried to follow Carla into the pantry, I invited him to help me check the flowers. He noticed. He looked up at me once and whispered, "Is it happening tonight?" His voice was so small it made my chest ache. I crouched. "Listen, Evan. If anyone asks you questions, you look at me first, okay?" He nodded slowly. "And if someone tells you to say something," I added, "you tell them you want to talk to me." He blinked hard, fighting tears like he was too old to cry and too young not to. "Promise," he whispered. "I promise," I said. But promises in that house were fragile things. The real protection would be truth on a screen in front of people who mattered to Veronica. Around 6, guests started arriving. They came in waves, cars with dark windows, dresses that shimmered under the entrance lights, men in suits with the relaxed confidence of people who never waited in line for anything. Veronica greeted them at the door with a smile that could pass for kindness if you didn't know how sharp it was underneath. She wore a pale dress that made her look almost innocent, almost. She kept touching her neck, drawing attention to the absence of the necklace, even though she never mentioned it directly. Not yet. I moved through the house with a tray of sparkling water, my posture straight, my expression calm. My heart was not calm. It beat hard against my ribs like it was trying to warn me. I watched the security staff at the back hallway. I watched Lena slip in and out of the security room, pretending she was checking something, but always checking who was watching her. And I watched Ben. He stayed near the edges like a shadow, doing tasks that made him look ordinary, carrying boxes, moving chairs, opening doors. But his eyes were always tracking, counting, waiting. Mr. Gray appeared once briefly near the service corridor. He didn't stop, he didn't speak. He just passed behind me and murmured so low I almost thought I imagined it. 9:22. My hand tightened around the tray. 9:22. A time, a clue. I walked into the kitchen, set the tray down, and stared at the wall for half a second, forcing my mind to lock onto the number. Then I heard Veronica's voice from the living room, bright and loud. "Everyone, welcome, thank you for coming. Tonight is about generosity, about children, about the future." Children. She said it like she cared. Evan stood in the corner beside a small table with a framed photo of him in a suit, smiling. Veronica had placed it there like a centerpiece, a symbol, a tool. He looked lost in the crowd, too small among all the adult bodies. I walked toward him slowly, acting like I was just passing, and touched his shoulder lightly. He leaned into me without looking, like he needed the contact to breathe. Veronica watched us. I felt her eyes like heat on my skin. Then, just as I expected, she moved. She tapped her glass with a spoon, drawing attention. The room quieted. She stepped into the center, the perfect host. "I want to thank all of you for supporting this cause," she said, "and I want to talk about something personal, something that happened in my home." My stomach dropped. Evan stiffened. I slid my hand into his and squeezed. Veronica's eyes found me immediately. As some of you know, she continued, we recently welcomed a caregiver into our home, someone we trusted with our child. She paused for effect. And yesterday, that trust was violated. Murmurs spread like smoke. I kept my face still. My throat felt tight. Veronica's voice softened, dripping fake sadness. A valuable item was stolen. She lifted her hand to her throat again. Empty. I didn't want to mention it tonight, she said, as if she was being noble. But I believe accountability matters, especially when we're raising children to understand right from wrong. My stomach turned because she was about to use Evan as a moral accessory, and then she did it. She turned toward Evan and held her hand out like a mother in a commercial. Evan, she said sweetly, come here, sweetheart. Evan didn't move. He clutched my hand tighter. Veronica's smile tightened. Evan, she repeated, sharper now. The room watched. Pressure filled the air. Evan looked up at me, eyes wide, silently asking what to do. I whispered, barely moving my lips, stay with me. Veronica's gaze snapped to me. Lucia, she said, loud enough for everyone, don't be dramatic. Let him come. I swallowed. This was the moment she wanted. The child separated, the nanny exposed. But before I could speak, Ben stepped forward. Not fast, not aggressive, just present. Veronica, he said calmly, you told me you wanted this event to be about donations, not drama. Veronica's eyes flashed with irritation. And you are? She said, as if she couldn't remember him. He didn't answer directly. He just looked around the room and said, if we're going to talk about accountability, maybe we should talk about evidence. The word evidence made the room lean in. Rich people loved evidence when it wasn't about them. Veronica's smile became brittle. The evidence is already clear, she said. The item was found in her possession. A gasp. A few heads turned toward me like I was a headline. Evan made a small choking sound. I felt his fingers tremble in mine. Found where? Ben asked. Veronica's eyes narrowed. In her bag. Ben nodded slowly, like he was taking notes. And you have security cameras, he said, correct? Veronica's jaw tightened. Yes, she said, but they were glitching, like I said. Ben's voice stayed even. Then it should be easy, he said, to show the footage, the full footage. Veronica let out a short laugh. Oh, please, she said. We're not going to bore our guests with security videos. But I saw it, a tiny crack in her composure. Because the footage was the one thing she didn't want on a big screen. Ben took one step closer, still calm, still controlled. Is it boring? He asked. Or is it inconvenient? The room went quieter. Veronica's eyes sparked with anger. You're overstepping, she snapped. Ben nodded slightly as if he expected that. Maybe, he said, but I was hired to assess risk. And right now, this house feels risky. Veronica's face shifted. Hired by who? She demanded. Ben didn't answer. Instead, he looked at me, just for a second, a silent question. Are you ready? My heart hammered. I glanced at Evan. He looked terrified, but he also looked like he trusted me with something bigger than comfort now. I squeezed his hand. Then I took a breath, and I stepped forward. The room's attention hit me like a spotlight. My voice came out steady, which surprised even me. I did not steal anything, I said. Veronica scoffed loudly. Ben raised a hand slightly, not at me but at the room, commanding attention without trying. What if, he said, the video tells a different story? Veronica's voice rose. There is no different story. Mr. Gray appeared at the back of the room like he'd been there all along. He didn't step forward, but he cleared his throat once. It was small. It was nothing. And yet Ben's eyes flicked to him, and then to the hallway that led to the security room. 9:22. My pulse spiked. Ben looked back at Veronica. "If you're confident," he said, "then you have nothing to lose." Veronica's lips tightened into a thin line. For a moment, she seemed to consider refusing, but refusing in front of these people would look suspicious. And Veronica couldn't stand suspicion on her. She thrived on certainty. She lifted her chin. "Fine," she said. "Show them. Waste everyone's time." She turned toward Carla and snapped, "Go get Lena. She knows the system." Lena's name landed in my mind like a bell. Lena, who spoke Portuñol. Lena, who said the necklace was stored where it always is. Lena, who mentioned a blind spot. Lena appeared a minute later, wiping her hands like she'd been busy. She smiled nervously at the guests. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Veronica pointed toward the hallway. "Pull up yesterday's footage, the upstairs corridor. Show them." Lena hesitated just a fraction. Then she nodded and walked toward the security room. Veronica looked satisfied, like she was about to win twice. Ben walked after Lena, casually, like he was just helping. I watched them disappear down the hallway. Then I felt Evan tug my hand. He leaned close and whispered, shaking, "She's going to make me say it." My stomach clenched. "No," I whispered back. "Not tonight." He swallowed hard. "But I wrote—" "I know," I whispered quickly. "And it's okay. You meant the drawing. You did nothing wrong." His eyes filled again. "I don't want you to go," he whispered. I squeezed his hand and forced my voice calm. "I'm not going," I said. "Watch me." The guests started murmuring, excited now like they'd been handed a reality show inside a mansion. Veronica turned to them and laughed, playing host again. "You know how it is," she said lightly. "You try to help people and sometimes they take advantage." She looked at me with a smile that was pure poison. And then, as if to twist the knife, she said loudly, "Lucia, you understand, right? This is why people have rules." "Rules? For people like me?" The screen in the living room, a large one usually used for family movies or sports, flickered. Lena's hands moved quickly on the system. A security feed appeared, grainy but clear. Veronica's smile widened. "There," she said, pointing. "Watch." The footage showed the upstairs hallway, timestamp in the corner. Ben's voice cut through gently. "Go ahead," he said to Lena. "Play from 9. Veronica frowned. "Why 9? Ben didn't look at her. "Because I want context." Lena hesitated again. Then she hit play. The footage rolled. It showed a quiet hallway, a door opening. Me. I appeared on the screen, carrying folded towels. My stomach tightened seeing myself like that. Small, working, unaware. In the footage, I walked toward the bathroom, dropped towels inside, and exited. I didn't stop in Veronica's bedroom. I didn't touch a tray. Veronica's brow furrowed. "Skip ahead," she snapped. Ben held up a hand. "Wait," he said calmly. "Keep playing." The footage continued. A few minutes later, the camera view glitched. A brief blur. Then it resumed. And then, at 9:22, someone else appeared. Lena, on screen, carrying something dark in her hand. My breath caught. The room went still. Lena on screen looked around quickly, then moved to Veronica's bedroom door, slipped inside, and came back out. Her hand was empty now. She walked down the hallway and disappeared. The living room erupted in shocked murmurs. Veronica's face froze. Lena, real Lena, stood near the security console, her skin suddenly pale. "What is this?" Veronica snapped, voice rising too high. Ben's voice stayed steady, almost gentle. "It's footage," he said. "From your own system." Veronica spun on Lena. "You went into my room?" she demanded. Lena's mouth opened and closed like she couldn't find words. I was cleaning," she stammered. "I was told—" Veronica's voice cut through her. "By who?" Lena's eyes flicked toward Carla for half a second. Carla's face tightened. Ben leaned closer to the console. "Interesting," he said. "Now show the footage where Lucia's bag gets the necklace." Veronica's eyes flashed. "That happened downstairs," she snapped, "in front of everyone." Ben nodded slowly. "And yet," he said, "we have a woman entering your room at 9:22. Mr. Gray's voice came from the back, quiet but clear. "Funny thing about edits," he said. "They leave fingerprints." The room turned toward him like they'd just noticed he existed. Veronica's face tightened. "Who is that?" one guest whispered. "Just security," Veronica snapped, dismissive. But Mr. Gray didn't look dismissed. He stepped forward slightly, still calm. "I've been running systems like this longer than most folks been wearing suits," he said, "and you don't get a glitch at the same minute every day unless someone makes it happen." My heart hammered, because he was exposing something bigger, not just the necklace, the whole manipulation. Ben looked at Lena. "Pull up the access logs," he said. Lena's hands shook. I don't—" Ben's tone remained polite, but something in it hardened. "Pull them up," he repeated. Lena swallowed and clicked through menus. A list appeared on the screen. Entries, times, usernames. Most people in the room wouldn't understand it, but Ben did. Mr. Gray did. And I did enough to see patterns. Ben pointed. "Who's logged in as admin to?" he asked. Lena hesitated. That's the cleaning login," she stammered. "It's shared." Ben nodded slowly. "And yet," he said, "admin 2 accessed the camera archive yesterday at 9:18, then again at 9:24, and then again at 2:47 p.m., right before the guests arrived." The room buzzed. Veronica's eyes widened, then narrowed, trying to find a way out. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "Technical nonsense." Ben's voice stayed calm. "It's not nonsense," he said. "It's how people hide things." He turned to the guests, addressing them now. "Everyone here understands investments, right?" he said. "You understand audits, records, trails." A few people nodded, intrigued. "Security is the same," he continued. "A trail exists, and someone tried to erase it." Veronica's voice turned sharp, desperate. "So what? My staff has access. That proves nothing about Lucia." Ben looked at me, then at Evan, then back at Veronica. "It proves," he said, "that your accusation was premature." Veronica scoffed loudly, but her laugh sounded strained now. "Premature," she repeated. "The necklace was in her bag." Ben nodded once. "Yes," he said. "And that's the part I want to see." He leaned toward Lena again. "Show the camera angle from the hallway closet," he said, "where the staff bags are kept." Lena's eyes widened. "That camera," she said quickly. "That one was glitching," Ben finished. Lena swallowed. Veronica snapped, "There is no camera in that closet." Mr. Gray spoke again. "There is," he said calmly. "It got installed last month after someone stole silverware. Veronica signed off on it." Veronica's face went rigid. She had forgotten, because she didn't pay attention to things unless they made her look important. Ben's eyes stayed on Lena. "Pull it up," he said. Lena's hands trembled as she clicked. The feed appeared. It showed the closet, staff shelves, hooks, bags, my bag on the shelf, and then timestamp. Yesterday afternoon, the moment before Veronica made the accusation. The footage showed Carla entering the closet. My breath caught. Carla on screen looked around quickly. Then she reached up, grabbed my bag and opened it. The room gasped. Carla, real Carla, stood in the living room now, face pale, eyes wide like she'd been caught stealing air. On screen, Carla's hands moved fast. She pulled something from her pocket, a small velvet box. She shoved it deep into my bag. Then she zipped it, hung it back, and walked out. The living room exploded into shocked voices. Veronica's face went white. Evan made a small sound, like a breath escaping. I stood frozen, watching my life rewind on a screen. Proof, clear, ugly, undeniable. Someone shouted, "Oh my God!" Another voice, louder, "She framed her!" Veronica's voice cut through, shrill. "Turn that off!" she screamed. Ben didn't move. He looked at Veronica with something close to contempt now. "No," he said calmly. "I think we're done turning things off." Veronica's eyes darted, searching for control. She pointed at Carla, like she could throw her under the bus and still stand clean. This was not my idea," she snapped. "She did this on her own." Carla started shaking. "Veronica," she whispered. Veronica's voice rose. "Don't say my name like that. You're fired. You're both fired." Lena started crying, small, desperate sobs. Ben raised his voice just enough to cut through the chaos. "Everyone," he said, "please." The room quieted again, pulled by authority they hadn't yet named. Ben turned toward me. "Lucia," he said, "do you want to speak?" My throat burned. For a moment I couldn't, because humiliation doesn't vanish instantly just because you're proven right. My mind flashed to yesterday, Veronica's hand in my bag, my family photos tossed aside, Evan crying, the word immigration used like a knife. I took a breath. Then I spoke. "I came here to work," I said, voice steady, accent clear, "to care for Evan, to send money to my family. I did not steal. I never stole. But when she accused me, she did it in front of everyone because she wanted me to feel small." My voice cracked slightly, but I kept going. "She threatened me," I said. "She threatened immigration. She wanted me silent." The room murmured again, but this time it wasn't excitement. It was discomfort, because now the story was not entertainment. It was cruelty. Veronica's eyes flashed with rage. "She's manipulating you," she snapped. "She's playing the victim." Ben turned to Veronica slowly. "Funny," he said. "You said the same thing about the footage being nonsense." Veronica's breathing was fast now. She looked around at her guests, trying to pull them back to her side with charm. But charm doesn't survive hard proof. One woman, one of Veronica's friends from the brunch, stepped back like she didn't want to be associated with the smell of this. A man in a suit muttered, "This is disgusting." Veronica's face twisted. "You don't understand," she hissed. "You don't know what she is." My body went cold, because that sentence wasn't about a necklace. It was about class, about race, about control. Ben's voice lowered. "I think we do understand," he said. "More than you want." Then he looked at Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray nodded once, and then he said the words that changed the direction of the room. "There's more," Mr. Gray said. Veronica's head snapped toward him. "No, there isn't." Mr. Gray's eyes stayed calm. "You used the wrong people," he said quietly. "And you got sloppy." Lena wiped her face, trembling. Carla looked like she might faint. Veronica took a step forward, voice sharp. "Stop talking. You're staff. You don't—" Ben lifted a hand. "Veronica," he said, "you should sit down." Veronica stared at him, stunned by the tone. Then Ben did something that made the room go dead silent. He pulled a phone from his pocket and tapped the screen. The living room TV switched to a different file. An audio clip. A recording. My stomach tightened, because I hadn't given him any recording. I realized then that Ben had been gathering evidence before I ever heard the portuñol. The audio played. Veronica's voice, clear, sharp, speaking in a messy mix of Spanish and Portuguese, words twisted but understandable. "As câmeras, ajusta, e deixa aquele ponto cego, ninguém vai ver." Then another voice, Lena's, replying. "O colar tá guardado no lugar de sempre. Depois a gente planta." The room erupted again. Someone actually said, out loud, "She confessed." Veronica's face turned gray. She lunged toward the console as if she could rip the screen apart. Ben stepped in front of her, not touching her but blocking her like a wall. "How do you have that?" Veronica demanded, voice cracking. Ben's eyes stayed calm. "I understand more languages than you assume," he said. A few people looked at me. then back at him. He let that hang for a second. Then he said in clear Spanish without accent, "No te saldrá." "It won't work." Veronica froze, because she realized then that she was surrounded by people who could see her now. Not the mask, the person underneath. She turned to the guests, voice desperate, trying to salvage status. "This is insane," she said. "This is a private matter. You're all guests in my home." A woman in a black dress snapped back. "You made it public when you humiliated her." Veronica's eyes flashed. Then suddenly she pivoted. Her gaze landed on Evan, and my stomach dropped because I saw it coming. She reached toward him with a sweet voice. "Evan," she said, "come here. Mommy needs you." Mommy. She loved that word when people were watching. Evan stiffened. He looked at me first. I whispered, "Stay." Veronica's voice sharpened. "Evan," she repeated, "come, now." Evan's eyes filled. He took a small step toward me instead, and that broke something in Veronica's face. Her control cracked. Her hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. Evan cried out. I moved instinctively, stepping forward. "Don't," I said, voice low. The room went silent again, because grabbing a child like that in front of donors shattered the last illusion of elegance. Ben's voice turned colder than I'd heard yet. "Let go of him," he said. Veronica snapped. "He is my child." Ben didn't blink. "No," he said. "He's not." The words dropped like a heavy object. Veronica froze. So did I. Evan stopped crying and looked up, confused. The guests leaned in, hungry now for the real reveal. Veronica's voice came out shaky with rage. "What did you just say?" Ben took a slow breath. Then, in a voice meant for everyone, he said, "My name isn't Ben." The room held its breath. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a slim card holder. He flipped it open and held it up. An ID. Most of the guests didn't need to read it fully to know what it meant. You could feel recognition ripple through them. Whispers started instantly. Oh my God, that's Miles. Miles Carter?" The name moved through the room like electricity. Veronica's face went rigid with shock. Miles Carter, the young investor, the foundation man, the one whose name appeared on donation plaques and hospital wings. He had been in her house, carrying boxes like a servant, and she hadn't known. Miles lowered the ID and looked directly at Veronica. "I came here because of Evan," he said. Veronica's eyes widened. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, but her voice trembled now. Miles didn't look away. "Evan is the reason you have a seat at any of these tables," he said calmly, "and you've been using him like a brand." Veronica's jaw tightened. "He is my son," she insisted, voice sharp. "I raised him." Miles' eyes flicked to Evan, softer now, then back to Veronica. "You've been his guardian on paper," he said, "not by blood." The room buzzed with shock. Veronica's hands clenched. "This is lies," she hissed. Miles nodded slowly. "Then you won't mind if I tell them why I'm here," he said. He turned slightly to the guests. "My foundation is launching a program," he said, "for children in unstable guardianship situations. Legal support, therapy, protection. Evan was flagged through private channels." Veronica's face twisted. "Flagged," she repeated, outraged. Miles's voice stayed even. "Yes," he said, "because there are ongoing legal concerns, financial inconsistencies, and reports of coercive behavior." Veronica's eyes flashed toward Mr. Gray, like she wanted to kill him with a stare. Mr. Gray didn't flinch. Miles continued. "I came in disguise because I needed to see who in this house could be trusted with a child," he said. "Who protects, who humiliates, who lies, who returns what isn't theirs. Character doesn't show up when everything is easy." His gaze landed on Veronica. "It shows up when you think nobody can touch you." Veronica's breath was fast. "And you think you can just take him?" she demanded, voice cracking. "You think you can steal my child?" Miles's voice turned sharp. "You framed a nanny and threatened deportation," he said. That's not parenting, that's abuse of power. Veronica shook her head wildly. No, no, you don't get it, she said, desperation seeping through. She was too close to him. She was making him love her more than me. There it was. Jealousy. Fear of losing control. Fear of being exposed as hollow. Miles looked at her with disgust. A child loving someone who cares for him isn't a threat, he said. It's a gift. And you tried to destroy it. Veronica's voice rose, shrill. She's an employee, she screamed. She's replaceable. The word replaceable hit me like ice. And yet, strangely, it also freed me. Because if she saw me like that, then she would never understand what I had actually done. I hadn't stayed for money. I hadn't stayed for pride. I had stayed because a child's safety mattered more than my dignity. Miles turned to me again. Lucia, he said, voice softer. Why did you accept the 48 hours? The room quieted, all eyes on me. My throat tightened, but I forced the words out. Because Evan, I said simply. Evan's eyes filled again. I continued, voice steady. If I left, she would tell him I abandoned him, I said, and she would use that pain to control him. I couldn't let that happen. A woman in the crowd whispered, "Oh my God!" Veronica's face twisted. "This is melodrama," she snapped, but she sounded weak now. Miles nodded once, like he'd heard enough. "Here's what happens now," he said, voice clear. "Veronica, you will issue a public apology. Tonight, in front of everyone you tried to impress. You will withdraw any threats against Lucia. You will provide written confirmation to her agency that she committed no wrongdoing." Veronica's mouth opened in disbelief. "I will not." Miles lifted a hand slightly. "If you refuse," he said calmly, "my lawyers will file everything we have, the footage, the audio, the logs, and we'll include the part where you threatened immigration to silence an innocent worker." Veronica's face went pale. Because the word lawyers was the only language she respected. Miles continued. "And your position at the school," he added, "your sponsorships, your charity board?" He let the silence answer. "You'll lose them," he said, "and you'll deserve it." Veronica's eyes darted around. She looked at her guests, searching for allies. But rich people are loyal only to comfort. And right now, she was discomfort. A man near the front, someone with a recognizable name, spoke quietly. "Veronica," he said, "this is indefensible." Veronica's face crumpled slightly, then hardened again. She turned toward me, eyes blazing. "You think you win?" she hissed. "You think they care about you?" Her voice dropped, poisonous. "They care about him," she said, nodding at Miles. "And he cares about the boy. You're just a useful story." It hurt, because it was exactly the kind of thing she would do. But then Evan spoke, small voice, clear. He stepped slightly toward me, even with Veronica still holding his wrist, and said, "She's not a story." Veronica froze. Evan's eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. "She's my safe," he said. The room went silent in a way that felt sacred. Veronica's grip loosened without her realizing. I stepped forward and gently pulled Evan into my side. He pressed against me like relief. Miles watched that with something intense in his face, something that looked like regret and responsibility at the same time. Mr. Gray cleared his throat again. "Now," he said quietly, "about that apology." Veronica's chest rose and fell fast. For a moment, I thought she might explode. But then she looked at the room, at the phones already out, recording, at the donors who would remember this forever. And she did what people like her do when trapped. She performed survival. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and forced her face into something like humility. She turned toward the guests. she began, voice trembling. She swallowed. I made assumptions, she said, each word tasting like poison. I believed the wrong people, and I handled it poorly. Handled it poorly, not I framed her, not I lied. But it was something. Miles didn't move. He didn't soften. Veronica turned toward me, jaw tight. Lucia, she said, voice strained, I apologize for accusing you without proof. Without proof. The room murmured again. Miles' eyes narrowed slightly. Say it clearly, he said. Veronica's face twitched. Her eyes flicked to the screen, still showing Carla planting the box. Then she forced the words out. I was wrong, she said. The necklace was planted. Lucia did not steal it. My chest tightened. The sentence felt unreal, a public clearing. The thing I needed. Veronica continued, voice shaking. I retract any threats. I will provide documentation. Her voice broke. She stopped, and for the first time she looked genuinely scared. Not of what she'd done to me, of what she was losing. Miles nodded once. Good, he said. Then he turned to Carla and Lena. Both of you, he said calmly. You'll speak to my security team outside. Now. Carla started crying. Lena's knees looked like they might give out. They walked out with two quiet men who had appeared near the back, men who were not staff, not guests, not visible until needed. Veronica watched them go like she wanted to burn the hallway down. The guests started whispering again, some already stepping away, eager to distance themselves from the wreckage. But Miles wasn't done. He looked at the room and raised his voice. I want to be clear, he said. This was not a simple theft accusation. This was a manipulation using a child and a vulnerable worker. He glanced at Evan, then back at the crowd. If you support this foundation, he continued, you support the protection of children and the people who care for them, not the exploitation of them for status. Several people nodded, uncomfortable but cornered by morality. Miles then turned to me. Lucia, he said, your salary is doubled effective immediately. The room murmured. And you will receive legal support, he added, for any immigration concerns. My team will make sure no agency blacklists you based on false claims. My throat burned. I tried to speak, but only air came out. Evan squeezed my hand. Miles' gaze softened slightly. You kept your integrity when you had every reason to walk out, he said. That matters. Veronica let out a bitter laugh. Integrity, she spat quietly. Miles' eyes snapped back to her. And you, he said, voice cold, will step down from the charity board tonight. Veronica's face contorted. I built this. Miles cut her off. You hosted a fundraiser in a home where you frame workers, he said. You didn't build anything, you decorated it. A sharp silence. Veronica looked like she'd been slapped. One woman, someone important, cleared her throat and said, Veronica, I think it's best. For everyone. Veronica's eyes flashed with hatred. But she couldn't fight the room, not anymore, because the room was her oxygen, and it was turning away. After the crowd began to scatter, Miles motioned for me to follow him into the hallway near the security room. Mr. Gray walked with us, slow, steady. Evan stayed pressed against my side. In the hallway, away from the noise, Miles finally let his mask drop a little. He looked tired, not physically, morally. I'm sorry, he said quietly to me. I didn't know what to do with that. I had been accused publicly, humiliated, threatened, used as entertainment, and now the man who had watched it happen, who had tested me, was apologizing. I stared at him. You let it happen, I said, my voice low. He nodded once. Yes, he said, because I needed to know who would protect Evan when it cost them something. I swallowed hard. You used me, I said. He didn't deny it. I did, he said, and I hate that I had to. Mr. Gray snorted softly. "You always got a choice," he said. Miles glanced at him. Mr. Gray's eyes stayed sharp. "You could have stepped in sooner," he added. "But you wanted a clean story." Miles' jaw tightened. "You're right," he said quietly. I looked down at Evan. Evan looked up at Miles, confused but curious. "Who are you?" Evan whispered. Miles crouched slowly, putting himself at Evan's level. His voice softened in a way that surprised me. "I'm Miles," he said. "I'm someone who's been trying to make sure you're safe." Evan frowned. "Are you my dad?" The question hit the hallway like a sudden gust of wind. My chest tightened. Miles' face flickered. Pain, regret, responsibility. He didn't lie. "No," he said gently. "Not the way you mean." Evan's brow furrowed deeper. "But you're—" "Something," Evan said, "because children feel truth like heat." Miles nodded once. "I'm your legal guardian," he said carefully. "Not because I wanted power, because you needed protection, and because your father asked me to." Evan stared. "Where is he?" Evan whispered. Miles' eyes softened. "He can't be here," he said quietly. "But he loved you." Evan's mouth trembled. I felt his hand squeeze mine hard. I didn't push. I didn't ask questions in that moment. Evan's heart was too exposed. Miles stood. He looked at me again. "Veronica's been trying to keep control of the guardianship arrangement," he said, voice low. "She's been hiding financial records, moving money connected to Evan's trust, using him to get access to donors and board members." My stomach turned. So the necklace really had been an opening move, a distraction, a way to push me out so Evan would have no one who could see what she was doing. Miles continued. "When I heard she was targeting you," he said, "I realized she couldn't tolerate anyone Evan trusted, anyone who might notice patterns." Mr. Gray nodded slowly like he'd known. "Seen it before," he muttered. Miles exhaled. "I came undercover to watch," Miles said, "to see who would participate, who would stay silent, who would help her." He looked at me with something like respect. "And you," he said, "did the opposite of what most people do when they're cornered." I swallowed. "I stayed," I said softly. Miles nodded. "For him," he said. I didn't answer. Because yes, that was the whole point. We walked back toward the living room, where Veronica stood near the doorway like a dethroned queen watching her kingdom crumble. Phones buzzed. Guests whispered. Some were already leaving. Veronica's eyes followed us. When they landed on Evan in my arms, something ugly twisted in her face. "Don't touch him," she snapped at me, as if she could still command the air. Miles's voice cut through, flat. "You don't get to say that anymore," he said. Veronica's laugh was sharp, broken. "And you think the room will clap for you?" she hissed. "The hero billionaire, the immigrant nanny. This is a scandal." Miles didn't flinch. "Then let it be," he said. Veronica's eyes turned to me again. Hatred sharpened into something almost desperate. "You think you're loved," she said quietly, venomous. "But love doesn't feed you. It doesn't get you papers. It doesn't keep you here." My stomach tightened, because that was the exact fear she had weaponized from the beginning. Before I could respond, Evan lifted his head from my shoulder and looked at Veronica. His voice was small, but clear. "She feeds me," he said. Veronica froze. Evan continued, blinking through tears. "She makes me feel quiet inside," he said. Quiet inside. I felt my eyes burn. Veronica's face twitched like she was trying to find a way to argue with a child's truth. But she couldn't, because you can't negotiate with the way a child feels safe. Miles stepped forward. "Veronica," he said, "my team will be in touch tomorrow. You will cooperate, and you will not contact Lucia except through legal channels." Veronica's eyes widened. "Tomorrow?" she spat. "You think you can just walk in and rewrite my life?" Miles' voice stayed cold. "You rewrote hers," he said. "Now you get to live with the correction." Veronica's breath was sharp. Then she did something I didn't expect. She turned her gaze toward the guests, still lingering, and forced another performance smile. "Everyone," she said brightly, voice trembling, "thank you for coming. Please enjoy the dessert table." It was insane, like she thought she could paste the night back together with sugar. A few people stared at her like she was a broken machine. Then someone laughed, one short, disbelieving laugh, and it cracked the last of her control. Veronica's face twisted. She turned away, walking stiffly toward her office, shoulders rigid. I watched her go, and for the first time I didn't feel afraid of her. I felt pity, not soft pity. The kind of pity you feel for someone who built a whole life on illusions and then lit it on fire. When the house finally quieted, Evan fell asleep on the couch, drained. Miles spoke quietly to his team in another room. Mr. Gray lingered near the kitchen doorway, like a shadow that had decided to stand in light. I carried Evan upstairs and laid him in bed. He stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Are you still here?" he whispered. I brushed his hair back gently. "I'm here," I said. He blinked slowly. "Am I going away?" he whispered. My throat tightened. I chose truth, but gentle. "Things might change," I said softly. "But you will be safe." He frowned. "Will you be there?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "I'll fight for what's right," I said. He stared at me like he was trying to hold onto my face. Then he whispered, "Okay." And he fell asleep again. His small hand curled around the edge of the blanket, like he was holding on. Downstairs, Miles waited in the hallway. He looked at me when I came down. "Thank you," he said quietly. I didn't soften, not yet. "Don't thank me," I said, voice low. "Fix what you broke." His jaw tightened. "You're right," he said. He reached into a folder and pulled out papers. "A contract," he said, "new terms, better pay, housing, full legal support, and a reference letter." I stared at the documents. My hands trembled slightly as I took them. This was what I needed. But it didn't erase what happened. Miles watched my face. "You don't have to forgive me," he said. I looked up. "You tested me like I was an object," I said. "You left money on the table like a trap. You watched me get humiliated." Miles flinched slightly, not from fear, maybe from shame. "I did," he said quietly, "because I've seen people smile and lie for years. I needed something real." Mr. Gray cleared his throat. "And she was real," he said, "from day one." Miles nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. I exhaled. "What happens to Veronica?" I asked. Miles' gaze hardened. "She loses the board," he said. "The school will be notified. Her sponsorships will pull back. And legally, we'll address the trust issues." He paused, then added, "And she will not have custody access the way she did." My chest tightened. "What about Evan?" I asked. Miles' expression softened again. "He stays stable," he said. "That's the priority. Therapy, routine, school, and people who actually care for him." He looked at me carefully. "Which includes you," he said. My throat burned. I didn't cry. I refused. But something inside me loosened, just a fraction, like a knot finally acknowledging it might be untied. That night, after Miles left to handle legal calls and Mr. Gray returned to his post, I walked back through the mansion. The house was quiet now, like it had swallowed the chaos. I passed the living room table where Veronica had opened my bag. I saw my family photo pouch still sitting on a side table, untouched since she threw it. I picked it up carefully and slid it back into my bag. Then I noticed something else, a small object near the edge of the rug, half hidden by a chair leg, a cufflink, gold, heavy, engraved. It must have fallen from one of the donors during the event. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. It would be easy to leave it there. It would be easy to slip it into my pocket and tell myself I deserved something after what they did to me. I stood still, staring at it, feeling the weight of the moment. Because this was the part no camera needed to catch. This was the test nobody announced, the kind of test that defines you when no one is watching. I bent down and picked it up. Then I walked to the entryway where a tray held lost items, keys, sunglasses, random things rich people forgot. I placed the cufflink on the tray. I didn't announce it. I didn't look around to see if anyone saw. I just did it. Then I walked upstairs. In the hallway outside Evan's room, I paused and listened. Soft breathing. Safe. I exhaled and felt tears threaten again, but I held them back. I opened his door quietly and stepped inside. In the dim light, Evan stirred slightly and whispered, half asleep, "Lucia." "I'm here," I whispered. He murmured, "Okay," like that was all his heart needed. And I realized something that night. Veronica had tried to frame me with diamonds. She had tried to break me with humiliation. She had tried to threaten me with immigration like my life was disposable, but the thing she never understood, the thing she could never control, was this. Character isn't what you show when you're praised. It's what you do when you've been crushed. It's what you do when it would be easy to become bitter. It's what you do when nobody's watching. And in the end, the cameras didn't save me. The cameras only revealed what was already true. What saved me was the choice I kept making over and over, even when it hurt, to protect a child, to tell the truth, to return what wasn't mine, to stay human in a house that tried to treat me like a thing. The next morning, Veronica was gone, not physically, not yet, but socially. You could feel it in the silence of the staff, in the way Carla's absence left a gap, in the way Lena wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. You could feel it in the emails that started arriving to the house's shared office inbox, withdrawn sponsorships, cancelled lunches, polite distance from people who used to orbit Veronica like planets around a sun. Miles came by briefly. No disguise now. He wore a simple suit, but the way staff moved around him changed. They knew who he was now. He spoke to Mr. Gray with respect. Then he came to the kitchen where I stood making Evan's breakfast, like I'd done every day. "Lucia," he said. I looked up. Evan looked too, chewing quietly. Miles's voice softened. "I'm going to do this right," he said. Evan frowned. "Are you taking me?" Miles crouched again, careful. "No," he said gently. "I'm making sure you don't get used, and I'm making sure the people around you are safe." Evan looked at me, then back at Miles. "Does Lucia stay?" he asked, blunt. Miles glanced at me, waiting. I swallowed, because this part wasn't only about contracts. It was about my choice, too. I looked at Evan. I saw the fear he still carried, the way his eyes searched for stability. I thought of my family. I thought of the money I sent. I thought of how easy it would be to walk away now with a clean name and a reference letter, to find another job, to leave this pain behind. And then I thought of the way Evan had said, "She's my safe." I took a breath. "I will stay," I said softly, "if it is safe for him, and safe for me." Miles nodded. "It will be," he said. Then for the first time he looked at me not like an evaluation, like a person. "Also," he added, "the foundation board will hear the full story. Not a rumor, not a softened version. The truth." I nodded once. Before he left, Miles paused at the doorway and looked back. "One more thing," he said quietly. I waited. He gestured toward the tray by the entryway. "The cufflink," he said. My heart jumped. He'd noticed, or someone had told him. He continued, voice calm, "You could have kept it. Nobody would have known." I stared at him, face steady. But you returned it, he said. That's the kind of person Evan needs around him. I didn't answer, because I didn't want praise. I wanted peace. Miles nodded once and walked out. When the house finally settled into a new rhythm, quieter, less sharp, less poisoned, I sat with Evan at the kitchen table. He drew again. This time he drew a big house with a smaller house beside it. "What's that?" I asked gently. He smiled a little. "Our safe house," he said. I swallowed hard. He added, "And you're in it." I reached across and touched his small hand. "Thank you," I whispered. He looked up. "Can you tell them?" he asked quietly. "Tell who?" He nodded toward the world outside the gate, toward all the adults who made rules. "Tell them you didn't do it," he said. "Tell them you're good." I felt my eyes burn again. I nodded. "I will," I said. "And if you're still listening, if you've ever seen someone judged because they were poor or foreign or quiet, I want you to remember this story. Because people like Veronica rely on one thing. They rely on silence. So if you believe in protecting the ones who can't fight back, kids, workers, anyone trapped under someone else's power, stay with me. Hit like, subscribe, and stay close, because stories like this don't end when the screen goes dark. They end when the truth is loud enough that nobody can pretend they didn't hear it. That evening, a formal letter arrived. A printed apology from Veronica's legal team, a written retraction, a statement for the agency, confirmation that no report would be filed, cold words on expensive paper, but even cold words can matter when they protect your future. I read it once. Then I folded it and placed it in my bag beside my passport and my family photos. Proof, not of my innocence, because I didn't need paper for that. Proof that sometimes justice can happen, not quietly, but in front of everyone who thought you didn't deserve it. Later, when Evan went to bed, I stood in the doorway of his room and watched him sleep. His face looked softer now, less guarded. I whispered more to myself than to him, "You're safe." And for the first time since the necklace appeared in my bag, I believed it. Because the truth was on record. Because Veronica's mask was shattered. Because a rich man who thought he could test people learned something too, about power, about cruelty, about what it costs to watch and wait. And because a little boy had chosen, in front of everyone, to stand with the person who protected him, not because of money, not because of status, but because of character, when nobody was watching.